Although it seemed for a while like Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall was never going to be a reality, there is some news that Jon Jones may just be coming back. He says that a return is more than likely, and we know that Dana White does not want any other fight for Jon Jones other than Tom Aspinall. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to make a card that's worth it for the UFC. I'm going to make a card that is going to, in my opinion, guarantee at least 800K pay-per-view buys. But I actually think this card that I'm about to make for a potential Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall fight is something that could sell over 1 million pay-per-views. All right, and I've got a bunch of prelim fights. I've also got a bunch of main card fights. All right, so we're going to get into this, guys. I'm going to do a card builder for Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. And, you know, I understand that the way that cards are kind of built these days when it comes to having a huge fight is they'll have like a really good main event. Obviously, that's the huge fight, Aspinall versus Jones. But they'll also have a big co-main event. And then after that, it kind of falls off, right? You'll have a WMMA fight here. You'll have, you know, a shitty fight here and there. And we're not doing that. Okay, every single fight on this card is going to be stacked, and there's going to be some unconventional ones. But before we get into the main card, let me just let you guys know what I would like to see on the prelims. BoNichols just had a bit of a rough performance against Paul Craig, who he said he dominated, but we just didn't see a dominant performance that night. And, you know, some people think that BoNichols should be put on the slow path and maybe get him an easier fight than Paul Craig. You know, I think that although we shouldn't feed him to the wolves yet, let's still give him a test, and let's let him have a chance to redeem himself against someone that can grapple so that we can see Bo's confidence. Bo told Kamaru Usman and Henry Cejudo that there's no one else in the division other than Paul Craig who he wouldn't want to tangle with in the grappling because Paul Craig's best on his back, and he doesn't want the problems with Paul Craig, but he'd be happy to wrestle with anyone else. So you know what I want to see? I want to see BoNichols in there with a guy that's just a little bit better than Paul Craig on the feet, but also dangerous on the ground. A big test for Bo, and that would be ranked middleweight contender Roman Dolidze. All right, I want to see BoNichols versus double threat Dolidze. All right, big power on the feet, clubbing right hands, definitely better boxing than Paul Craig, and also very dangerous, more well-rounded. That's like the real Paul Craig matchup for BoNichols. And this guy said he dominated Paul Craig. All right, let's see if you can dominate Roman Dolidze. You know, that's a very tough matchup. What else are you going to give him? I honestly think that is one of the better matchups for him in the rankings. Might be a little bit too soon to give him a ranked opponent, but you know what? BoNichols, there's a lot of hype surrounding him at this point, and you know, fans are critiquing him and all that, and I think that seeing BoNichols on another Jon Jones card would be good because he does bring in a lot of attention. And of course, even though this is on the prelims, the wrestling dads, if you put this out, it's the main prelim fight, the wrestling dads, that's at least going to give you 100,000 extra pay-per-view buys. They're going to watch the Bo fight. If he wins, they'll probably buy the pay-per-view because they'll be in a good mood. So, you know, the wrestling dads are going to come out in full force. So I'd like to see that on the prelims. But another fight that I want to see is Beneil Dariush versus Grant the Missing Link Dawson. So Grant Dawson had a nasty TKO on the ground. He absolutely needed it. He got that last month. Really good finish. And so he's sort of back in the running of things. The Missing Link, of course, no one has seen him since, but we're going to bring him back to UFC 313. By the way, I didn't even mention this. This card is probably going to be in Las Vegas. So that's going to be where it's at. But I want to see the Missing Link go up against old crafty vet Beneil Dariush. You know, Grant Dawson's not the most dangerous striker. That's good for Beneil, who's coming off of a couple of knockout losses. And if Dawson can go out there and beat Beneil Dariush, then, you know, maybe we got to give him another chance at like a main event or something like that. So I'd love to see that fight. Another fight I'd like to see on the prelims is Chase Hooper versus Elvis Brenner. Elvis Brenner had a lot of hype after his initial UFC debut, which was against who? It was against Guram Kutateladze, of course. Hardcore fan favorite at the time. He KO'd Guram Kutateladze, but since then he's lost twice in a row to Odobai, and he's also lost to Joel Alvarez. So, you know, we're not going to give him a huge bump up, but we're going to give him another tough matchup. But you know what? Let's see if Chase Hooper can hang with these guys that are at the Odobai level, that are at the Joel Alvarez level. Chase Hooper's getting better and better and better. Okay, we got to give him a bump up at some point. You could do Chase Hooper versus a Jim Miller, but like, you know what? At a certain point, I'm not loving the, let's just feed the old UFC legends to the young prospect every single time. So I want to see Chase Hooper and Elvis Brenner, two fighters that are basically in their prime. Chase Hooper is close to his prime. Maybe not hit it yet, but that's a sick fight. And it's a dangerous fight for him. But you know what? At some point, you got to give him a bump up in competition. And I don't want it to be the case where we always give the young prospects like the old vet who has an extremely one-dimensional game plan. And he's only good at one thing, and that's it, like a Paul Craig, basically. Like, you got to give him someone that's actually a good, solid fighter that's not just 40 years old. So that's what I want to see. Last but not least, Shamil Gaethje versus Mick Parkin. The fight that we've all been waiting for. This is the real Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. Except instead of U.S. versus England, it's England versus Russia, Dagestan. But the Shamil Gaziyev is ranked at this moment, and Mick Parkin, all the hype he's getting. The commentators hype this man up as if he's the Tom Aspinall 2.0, right? He's a bad man. And this is a good test for him. Can he get past the marauding Shamil Gaziyev, who is now ranked? You got to think, now that he's got a ranking next to his name, that's got to give him newfound motivation. I know Shamil never had an issue with motivation. Shamil Gaziyev's always been motivated. But maybe an extra kick in the ass to, just push a little bit harder on those runs. Just trudge a little bit faster on the basketball court. Either way, I think it'd be a really good fight for both of these guys. Shamil Gaziyev would have at least 10,000 fans coming over to Las Vegas. At least 10,000, brother. And Mick Parkin's going to have at least a couple hundred coming out to see him. So right off the bat, you make this fight, you're adding at least 12,000 pay-per-view buys. But now, let's get on to the main card. If you work for the UFC, please, man, get this main card in Dana White's hands, bro. Because I'm telling you, this is going to be a million pay-per-views right here. First off, we're going to throw Justin Gaethje to the Wolves, okay? We're going to throw Justin Gaethje to the Wolves. I want to see if Justin Gaethje can wrestle. We know he took down Fiziev, but let's see how he does against lighter man skill, Yair Rodriguez. I've been saying it for years. Yair would beat Justin Gaethje on the feet. Yair would beat this guy, that guy, and everyone on the feet at lightweight, okay? We know what happens when people take him down. That's where it gets interesting. Justin Gaethje, when he takes people down, he's the one in danger, right? Gaethje takes you down, he's the one that's in danger now because his jiu-jitsu, it's not good. So that's what I want to see. Fucking epic matchup. Lighter man skill, 145-pound striking. Challenge Gaethje again with it. We saw it what happened when Max Holloway fought him. Let's see how he does against Yair. This is a dream matchup, okay? I thought about maybe Yair versus Rafael Fiziev. I just want Yair to move up to 155. It's a random fight. And people are going to be saying, what the heck, man? Like, Yair versus Gaethje makes no sense. It doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. It's a fucking sick matchup. Yair Rodriguez, Gaethje in a striking battle. Even though Yair's not a huge name, and people are going to say, he doesn't deserve what has Gaethje done recently? I mean, the last time I checked, he got KO'd. So, we're not just going to give Justin Gaethje a Michael Chandler BMF main event or a Dustin Poirier main event BMF belt for number 3. We're not going to do that. At a certain point, we need some fresh matchups. We're going to do Gaethje versus Yair. If Yair and Gaethje strike, we'll see the 145-pound skill versus lightweight skill, and we'll see how that plays out again. History tells me Yair wins that battle, but Gaethje could knock out Yair. Yair is hittable. Right off the bat, though, that fight alone draws a lot of attention. Gaethje versus Yair Rodriguez, that's like a fight of the year contender as a fight night main event. All right? As good as a Jan versus Figueiredo, but it's the first fight on the main card. That could be a co-main event of a pay-per-view. That's a huge fight. It's a barn burner. Okay, there's no way it would be boring. What's Yair going to do? Take Gaethje down and wrestle him? Like, I don't think Yair's going to do that. And Gaethje, okay, he's going to wrestle Yair and then what? Get submitted? Like, that ain't going to happen. It's going to be a stand-up battle, and it's going to be a barn burner. We also have former featherweights coming up next. Dustin Poirier versus Max Holloway 3. And I don't care if you want to put a BMF belt on it, do it. I really don't care. We're just trying to make a sick card right now. And we're talking about a huge pay-per-view card, something that would sell Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier 3, 5 rounds. Lighter man skill is back. Can Dustin Poirier shut it down again? He shut it down once. First time they fought, they were both featherweights, so that wasn't lighter man skill versus lightweight, but we'll see. I think Max Holloway is going to be able to take this, but it could be real interesting. Could be very interesting. And, Gaethje on the same card. We'll see Rufus hanging out with these guys. They've all fought each other at this point. I mean, right off the bat, these two fights alone, with how big of a name Dustin is and Justin is and Max is, and, Yair, he's going to be a big name in Mexico as well, and hardcore fans love Yair striking, right? These two fights alone do like 400K, 500K. I don't know, maybe 500K a couple years ago is 400K today because, again, streaming just continues to be like really popular or whatever. But I think that this and the Gaethje versus Yair fight, that's already like $500,000. So we need 3 other big fights. And why not add a little bit of a bantamweight to the mix? Let's do Nerdhagen versus Sean O'Malley for a 3-rounder. And if you want to switch the order, if you want to do Poirier and Max after this, then I'm okay with that. Sandhagen is back, and this is the fight we've wanted to see for the longest time. Both guys have shown interest in this matchup, all right? A lot of people want to see the O'Malley-Jan fight, but Merab is calling for a Jan fight, and, then there's Umar in the mix. Listen, I think Jan should be fighting for the belt next, and I think it should be after Umar versus Merab. Like, I don't want to see Jan versus O'Malley in a 3-rounder, 5-rounder. Like, we've seen it already. I want to see a new matchup. And I think that Jan deserves to fight for the title. I also just don't want to see him get fucked over by the judges if it's a close fight. So I want to see O'Malley versus Sandhagen. Okay, and if O'Malley wins this fight, then maybe he can get back in the title picture. But this is a fight that we've always wanted. Both guys have the same build. First time O'Malley's going to be fighting someone that's his size. Same thing for Sandhagen, really. And I think O'Malley would outstrike Sandhagen. But Sandhagen can strike with O'Malley if he doesn't get too caught up with the beakers and test tubes. But if he does get too caught up with the beakers and test tubes, maybe there's a world where Sandhagen just knees O'Malley to the thigh and takes him down and lands a couple of peppermint punches on the ground. Maybe there's a world where Sandhagen just, times the takedowns perfectly, and his training and wrestling is proven to be really good. I mean, it looked pretty good against Umar, even though we didn't see a whole lot of it. Sandhagen defended pretty well. Seems like as his career has progressed, he's been leaning on his wrestling more than his striking, which to me is why he didn't do that well in the striking against Umar. But either way, it's a dream matchup. O'Malley versus Sandhagen. This is not going to add that many buys, but again, it's going to make it so that if you just look at the card, it's going to look perfect. It's like 2 amazing fights already, and we have this one. What could possibly be next? If the next 2 fights are sick, Jon Jones and Aspinall is going to be one of them, obviously. One more big fight is getting this to $1 million. One more big fight, you're going to have an argument that this is the best main card in history. And people are going to say, no, UFC 300 was way better, bro. BoNichols versus Cody Brundage was on there. Zhang Wei Li versus Yan Jiaonan was on there. No, it was not even close to being as good as this. All right, right now I'm cooking up the best card in history. And, I could do something unrealistic. I could be like, title fight here. We don't have to do that. All right, if you have a critique for any of these fights, if you think that this card right now is somehow shit, the only argument you can have is it's not realistic or it just doesn't make sense. But like, who cares, bro? We're trying to make a stacked card. This card kicks ass, okay? Next up, we have Alex Pereira defending his belt, because I want to have Pereira on this card because there's a storyline with him and Jones and him and Aspinall. We've been talking about a potential move up to heavyweight for Alex Pereira for the past 1.5 years at this point. So let's throw him on the card. It makes it that much bigger. It sets up a future super fight between him and the winner of Jones versus Aspinall. And obviously, the guy that we want to see him fight next in his own division is Magomed Ankalaev. That is the fight. All right? That's the one. That's the dark horse of the division. That's the guy that, people are claiming that he's ducking. I don't think he's ducking Ankalaev. I just think that the fight hasn't happened yet. Right? And I think the UFC is really wanted to make it difficult for Ankalaev to get a title fight, but I don't think Pereira is ducking this, man. Pereira is down to fight anyone, right? At this point, that's pretty obvious with all the short notice fights, but Pereira, biggest name in the UFC, arguably at this point. I mean, think about the pop he gets these days when he walks out. He has the entire arena doing Chama chants. That wasn't even happening at UFC 300. Since UFC 300, he's had 2 main events. And every single main event, he's gotten bigger and bigger as a star. Face of the UFC, arguably, with his activity. Him on the same card as Aspinall and Jon Jones. That right there alone is going to get us close to 1 million. But if you add Sandhagen O'Malley, if you add Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier 3, if you add Justin versus Yair, you have 1 million pay-per-views guaranteed. Guaranteed. All right? I don't see why this fight card couldn't happen. Again, maybe the UFC would be like, nope, you got to save Max and Dustin for another card. Nope, you got to save this one for another card. Why not put him on the same? We had UFC 300. There are so many other great fighters in the UFC at this point. We still have JDM. We still have Shavkat. We still have Topuria. We still have Makhachev. We still have Adesanya. We still have Dricus du Plessis. We still have Khamzat Chimaev. There's so many other fights. Volkanovski, Diego Lopez, right? Jan, Umar, Merab. There's so many other cards that are going to be just fine if they make this. But this is what I believe could be a card that makes it worth it for the UFC, right? They're going to pay Jon Jones more money. Well, I think it's worth the investment if this is what they are putting on, right? Because I think this is going to do numbers. So let's hope that they make it happen. Either way, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Until next time.